VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
We do thank you for joining us on Crosstalk, coming your way from VCY America, and it's a Friday News Roundup today on the broadcast. So much is unfolding virtually every single day. We're going to cover a number of issues today. We're going to start out talking about some of the goings-on pertaining to the nation of Israel, but many other issues that are unfolding across our nation and around the world to seek to bring to your attention. Certainly there is much unfolding, and friends, we don't live in fear, but we live in complete trust and dependence upon the Lord, knowing that what He has before ordained will come to pass, and how important it is for us to be salt and light in this world around us, and certainly to live the life that Christ has called us to live, to be observant of the times in which we live, and also know that, as the prophet Hosea said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. We need to certainly understand what is happening in our world, not to be so caught up in it that we live in fear and shy away from our Christian witness, but know it should compel us even further to walk with our Savior, to be faithful in these times, troublesome times, perilous times, as we see characterized in the book of 2 Timothy. We're going to begin today, though, with our first story from this one from FoxNews.com. French President Emmanuel Macron took to X yesterday to announce his intention for France to become the State of Palestine. He wants to recognize the State of Palestine at the UN General Assembly coming up next September. The French people want peace in the Middle East, he wrote in a letter and translated in English on X. It's up to us, the French, together with the Israelis, the Palestinians, our European and international partners, to demonstrate that this is possible. Israeli officials responded swiftly and sharply. A statement from the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, said, "We strongly condemn President Macron's decision to recognize a Palestinian state next to Tel Aviv in the wake of the October 7th massacre. Such a move rewards terror and risks creating another Iranian proxy, just as Gaza became. A Palestinian state in these conditions would be a launch pad to annihilate Israel, not to live in peace beside it. Let's be clear, the Palestinians do not seek a state alongside Israel. They seek a state instead of Israel." From the Times of Israel, media in Gaza reported that the IDF, that's Israeli Defense Force tanks, had pushed into the southern and eastern districts of Deir el-Balah, in one of the few places in the Strip where the IDF has, until now, not operated with ground troops because it's believed that Hamas to be holding hostages there. Though it conducted airstrikes, Hamas has vowed to execute captives if the IDF approaches. A day earlier, the IDF issued an evacuation warning for several zones in the southwest of this area. Many Palestinians had sought refuge. The UN says somewhere between 50 and 80,000 people. Israel has said to move toward the south area of the coast. From Fox News, Iran Monday confirmed it will not give up its nuclear enrichment program in an exclusive interview with the Iranian foreign minister. This would be Abbas Araghchi. This was an interview with Bret Baier. The Iranian official confirmed that the U.S.'s top ambition in preventing Tehran from further developing a nuclear weapon by blocking all enrichment capabilities is unlikely to come to fruition, despite threats of intense international sanctions. We cannot give up enrichment because it's the achievement of our own scientists, and now, more than ever, it's a question of national pride, he said. Our enrichment is so dear to us. Well, President Trump has vowed to repeat strikes after Iran has vowed to continue the nuclear program. Okay, interesting story here as well. A foreign nation, this is from the Post-Millennial, a foreign national from Lebanon has been sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison for conspiring to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act and the Iranian transactions and sanctions regulations when he attempted to smuggle U.S.-made drills to Iran. The 63-year-old has been sentenced to 44 months in prison. This is Brian Assi. for the attempted unlawful export of goods from the U.S. to Iran without a license, attempting smuggling goods from the U.S., submitting false or misleading export information, as well as conspiracy to commit money laundering, according to a press release from the Department of Justice. From the Jerusalem News Service, the United States will examine alternative options to bring home the 50 captives held by Hamas, as a terrorist group does not appear to be coordinated or acting in good faith. That's a statement from U.S. Mideast Envoy Steve Witkoff. Said that yesterday. He said, "We've decided to bring our team home from Doha for consultations after the latest response from Hamas, which clearly shows a lack of interest to reach a ceasefire in Gaza." The Post-Millennial reporting that the U.S. Department of Justice and U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia have unsealed a civil forfeiture action targeting approximately $2 million in digital currency allegedly tied to a Gaza-based terror finance network. The funds, held in accounts managed by Tether Limited and Binance Holdings, were connected to Buy Cash Money and Money Transfer Company, a money services business accused of funneling funds to Hamas and other foreign terrorist organizations. Federal authorities said Buy Cash served as a financial conduit for Hamas and its military wing, as well as groups affiliated with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. From Breitbart, newly released Israeli Defense Forces footage exposes Hamas operatives living in luxury beneath Gaza's devastated streets, feasting on elaborate meals and well-stocked underground tunnels, while the terror group simultaneously spreads propaganda claiming that Israel is starving the Palestinian population, with IDF Arabic spokesman declaring that this is how the terrorists have behaved underground, isolated from the suffering of the population and contrary to the false claims of starvation. The video shows multiple Hamas terrorists preparing and consuming what appears to be substantial, well-prepared meals in spacious tunnel complexes. According to the IDF, the food items displayed to the underground feast were not part of any humanitarian aid deliveries to Gaza. The IDF maintains that previous military operations have uncovered extensive caches of food, water, medical supplies, and cash stored in Hamas tunnels that would be underground. And we also have here from townhall.com a major update on President Trump's strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities. The New York Times is reporting a quote here, indicating that the bombings deeply damaged Fordo, considered by the Iranians to be their best protected and most advanced nuclear enrichment site, probably crippling Iran's ability to make nuclear fuel for years to come. Iran's deeply buried nuclear enrichment plant at Fordo, badly damaged, potentially destroyed by the 12 massive bombs that the U.S. Air Force B-2 bombers dropped on it last month. That's according to a new American intelligence assessment. Two other nuclear sites targeted in the U.S. attacks were not as badly damaged, but facilities at the sites would be key to fabricating a nuclear weapon were destroyed that could take years to rebuild. A U.S. official said, a senior Israeli official said last week that the strikes most likely did not eliminate the stockpile of near-bomb-grade fuel that could be used to produce upward of 10 nuclear weapons, but without the facilities to manufacture a weapon, U.S. officials insist the fuel would be of little use, even if the Iranians could dig it out of the rubble. From GNSnews.org, a woman in her 70s indicted yesterday for an alleged attempt to assassinate Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, reportedly planning to carry out the attack with an anti-tank weapon. Okay, we also, we continue to watch what's going on with Russiagate as well. Law professor Jonathan Turley does not mince words as to which former Biden official, Obama officials at risk most of being charged with their role in the Russian collusion hoax. The George Washington University Law School faculty member described an ex-CIA director, John Brennan, as being the 30-point buck out in the open. Here's what he had to say.
And it does appear that a couple of these figures may have committed perjury. I think the most vulnerable may be Brennan, who's like a 30-point buck now out in the open. I mean, this stuff goes directly to information that he gave to Congress. It seems to be in contradiction. And so there are real questions here. I mean, people talk about, well, you can't charge Obama. That's very likely the case. He's probably protected. But these individuals, whether it's Comey or Brennan, are not protected from perjury charges if the statute of limitations has not run. They are more likely to be called again to repeat prior testimony.
And that in testimony and investigations continue on. From justthenews.com, Columbia University will reportedly pay more than $220 million to the Trump administration to settle civil rights violations that were committed against Jewish students and anti-Israel protest at the school. The school, committed to reversing its racially discriminatory practices, also agreed to submit to independent monitoring to ensure it is complying with merit-based hiring and admission requirements, that reported by the New York Post. And from worthynews.com, a new congressional investigation has revealed that over $900 million in U.S. taxpayer funds were funneled through federal agencies and nonprofit organizations to support protest against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Some cases even fund entities with known ties to terrorism. The findings released last Thursday by the House Judiciary Committee have sparked outrage and renewed scrutiny of the Biden administration's oversight of foreign aid. A 300-page document, the Biden-Harris administration's funding of anti-Netanyahu non-government organizations. Listen to some of these. The PEF Israel Endowment Funds, it's a U.S. nonprofit, distributed over $884 million to groups actively involved in large-scale demonstrations opposing judicial reform in Israel. There was the Jewish Communal Fund that allocated $42.8 million to organizers of protest, specifically aimed at blocking Netanyahu's legal and governmental reforms. There was the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, receiving $20 million in federal grants, believed to have redirected some of those funds to fuel the Israeli protest movement. Blue White Future, described by the committee as a radical anti-Netanyahu organization, identified as a downstream recipient in a financial trail that originated with U.S. government funds. Movement for Quality Government in Israel, $42,000 to conduct civic activism training in Israel high schools, a program viewed by the committee as politically charged, and it goes on from there. Speaking of Columbia here just a bit ago, the Epoch Times is reporting that Columbia University has expelled, suspended, and revoked degrees of multiple students for participating in what it described as disruptive protests in spring of 24 and earlier this year. They announced the disciplinary actions on Tuesday. It stems from a pro-Palestinian encampment on campus and the occupation that took place of the reading room and Butler Library. In response to the latter incident, the university placed 71 students on interim suspension during the month of May. And in a decisive political statement, Worthy News reports that the Israeli Knesset voted overwhelmingly Wednesday in favor of a non-binding resolution declaring the support for the application of full Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley, territories comprising what is internationally referred to as the West Bank. The declaration affirms that these territories are inseparable parts of the land of Israel, the historic, cultural, and spiritual homeland of the Jewish people, and urges the Israeli government to begin the process of applying sovereignty, law, and administration across all Jewish communities in these areas. The land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel, yesterday, today, tomorrow, and forever, said a member of the Knesset, Simcha Rothman, one of the resolution sponsors, during the Knesset debate. We'll be back with more news, other topics after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and author with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, before the fall of man, did animals suffer?
Chris, the Bible says at the end of creation week, things were very good. Things would live forever with no pain or death. With Adam's sin came the wages of sin. But evolutionists believe that animals lived and died long ago. In fact, the dinosaurs went extinct before man even got here. And yet some of them lived with great pain. A recent discovery of a T-Rex fossil shows this. This dinosaur was quite old when it died. Earlier, it had suffered a broken leg and broken ribs, which had healed. It lived in terrible pain. Now, I don't think that this pain is the result of creation. It's the result of sin. It's certainly not very good, as God pronounced his completed creation back in Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
It's a Friday News Roundup here on Crosstalk. Thank you for joining us here this week on the broadcast. And, well, thank you for joining us every single day here on the program as we seek to keep you informed on critical matters. And as much as possible on Fridays, we seek to have a news roundup highlighting news events from the week itself. Let's go to some areas of news pertaining to life. And Planned Parenthood, this is from lifenews.com, has shut down a center in Texas. Tyler, Texas, reportedly permanently closed its doors with a sign on July 17th marking the end of operations. The pro-life advocates hailed the closure as a victory in their ongoing effort to end abortion. A growing trend of shutdowns across the nation here as well. Here is another story from lifenews.com. Planned Parenthood Great Rivers, a St. Louis-based affiliate over the nation's largest abortion business, has laid off employees in response to the Medicaid funding cuts triggered by a new federal law signed by President Trump. We also have other centers as well. Here is from Life News. Ohio has been experiencing winning results. Planned Parenthood Southwest Ohio announced closures of Springfield and Hamilton locations effective August 1. Planned Parenthood of Southwest Ohio's press release referred to the closure as a direct result of the federal reconciliation bill passed earlier this month that bars health care providers that offer abortion services from participating in the Medicaid program. So that is happening in many, many places across the United States. LifeNews.com also has the story of Nash Keene, born at 21 weeks gestation, weighing a mere 10 ounces, just celebrated his first birthday, July 5th, earning the Guinness Book of World Record as the most premature baby to survive. Was born 133 days before his due date at the University of Iowa Healthcare Stead Family Children's Hospital, surpassing the previous record held by a Curtis Means, who was born at 21 weeks and 1 day. So just celebrating the first birthday. And then also this story caught our attention. This is a preemie from Georgia who defied all expectations after being born at just 22 weeks and 1 day gestation, just celebrated his second birthday. Baby Toughborn had been in his mother's womb barely 22 weeks when he was born at a hospital in Atlanta. According to records, doctors typically do not provide resuscitation for extremely premature babies at 22 weeks, but that one extra day meant Baby Tough was given a fighting chance by that hospital. Remember the Army instruction declaring pro-life organizations as being terrorists? Well, WND.com has a story where the Army, who was caught describing pro-life members as the famed Pro-Life Operation Rescue Organization and others as terrorists, has admitted it was wrong to do that. Now it's apologizing. The Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll, has issued a formal apology to Operation Rescue for mischaracterizing the pro-life organization as a terror group during a counterterrorism and security training presentation that was used to teach 9,100 Army soldiers at Fort Bragg. Driscoll said the characterization was not only inaccurate, but also deeply inappropriate. His response came in a letter to the American Center for Law and Justice, which represented Operation Rescue and its president. Here is a release that came out from Health and Human Services. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, under the leadership of Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., announced a major initiative to begin reforming the organ transplant system following an investigation by its Health Resources and Services Administration that revealed disturbing practices by a major organ procurement organization. Our findings show that the hospitals allowed the organ procurement process to begin when patients showed signs of life, and this is horrifying. Secretary Kennedy had made that statement. He said the organ procurement organizations that coordinate access to transplants will be held accountable. The entire system must be fixed to ensure that every potential donor's life is treated with its sanctity that it deserves. They examined 351 cases where organ donation was authorized but ultimately not completed. But it was authorized to go ahead with organ donation. 103 of the cases, or 29.3%, showed concerning features, including 73 patients with neurological signs incompatible with organ donation. At least 28 patients may not have been deceased at the time that the organ procurement was initiated, raising serious ethical and legal concerns. Vulnerabilities were highest in smaller and rural hospitals, indicating systemic gaps in oversight and accountability. In response to these findings, HRSA has mandated strict corrective actions for the organ procurement program and system-level changes to safeguard potential organ donors nationally. Also, this one now from liveaction.org. On July 18th, the Trump administration officially rejected amendments to the World Health Organization's international health regulations agreed upon by member nations at the World Health Assembly last June that would threaten local pro-life legal protections. Though presented as a means to deal with the international spread of disease, these international health regulations makes a demand of countries that have nothing to do with disease and promotes ambiguous ideas that could promulgate pro-abortion and gender ideologies. Secretary Kennedy of the State Department warned that the IHR contained threats to national sovereignty, free speech, civil liberties, and more, just like we reported those crosstalk programs going into those programs last year. The WHO has long declared abortion to be essential and health care, and the IHR regulations give the potential to override a country's or a state's pro-life laws. And so as a result, the Trump administration officials have rejected these amendments to the World Health Organization. Newsmax.com, the United States will leave the United Nations Cultural and Education Agency, UNESCO, as President Trump continues to pull his country out of international institutions that he has long criticized. The move is a blow to the Paris-based agency. President Trump took similar steps during his first term, quitting the World Health Organization, the UN Human Rights Council, Global Climate Change Accord, and the Iran nuclear deal. Former President Biden reversed those decisions after taking office in 2021, returning the U.S. to UNESCO and WHO and the climate agreement. With President Trump now back in the White House, the U.S. is once again pulling out of these global bodies. Okay, we have from lifenews.com in a recent video, Kelsey Sharon, a Canadian combat veteran and an outspoken opponent of Canada's medical assistance in dying, that's the MAID policies, shared how Canada's government-controlled healthcare system plans to euthanize an estimated 15 million Canadians between 2027 and 2047. It's a staggering figure justified under the pretext of cost savings. While doctor-assisted suicide in the U.S. has not been yet reached the alarming extremes that are observed in Canada, the Death and Dignity movement is actively attempting to change that. Pending Governor Hochul's signature on the New York recently passed bill, 11 states and D.C. will permit this abhorrent and immoral practice. LifeNews.com is reporting assisted suicides have reached a record high in Switzerland. Total of 1,729 residents of Switzerland ended their lives by this means in 2023. That's an 8.4% increase over the previous year, and very troubling what is happening there. This is also troubling, friends. This is a story from LifeSiteNews.com. Former President Barack Obama delivered a shocking message during an appearance on his wife's podcast, asserting that every dad needs to have a gay man within his circle of friends, just in case his son identifies as gay or non-binary. Here's what he had to say.
That's one of the things that I think a lot of times boys need is not just exposure to one guy.
Mm-hmm. One dad.
No matter how good the dad
is. He can't be everything.
He can't be everything. And that boy may need somebody to give the boy some perspective on the dad.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
One of the most valuable things I learned as a guy was I had a gay professor in college at a time when openly gay folks still weren't out of line, who became one of my favorite professors and was a great guy and would call me out when I started saying stuff that was ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
You need that
Well,
to show empathy and kindness. And by the way, you need that person in your friend group so that if you then have a boy who's gay or non-binary or what have you, they have somebody that they can go, okay, I'm not alone in this.
Very, very troubling. I mean, here the former president saying, boys need homosexual men in their lives. Dads can't be everything, and if they are gay or non-binary themselves, you'll need that resource there to go to. Okay, let's get on to some other issues here. This from the Christian Post. An evangelical pastor, roughly 20 of his family members, were killed over the weekend in Syria, what church officials described as a targeted massacre. The victims included his parents, siblings, or children, other close relatives. Pastor Khalid Mezher, he led the Good Shepherd Evangelical Church, had converted from the Druze faith to Christianity along with his family several years ago, widely known in the region for his ministry work. They all have been martyred. From the conservative Daily News, Chinese state-sponsored hackers have exploited vulnerabilities in Microsoft software to breach sensitive systems around the world, including those of the U.S. government agency that oversees nuclear weapons. Bloomberg reported that on Tuesday. Microsoft alerted customers on Tuesday that groups believed to be backed by the Chinese government targeted flaws in its SharePoint document sharing software, allowing the hacking groups to access internal files and systems. While Microsoft has patched the security gaps, researchers have already confirmed that more than 100 servers tied to approximately 60 organizations have been infiltrated, including the U.S. National Nuclear Security Administration. That's according to Bloomberg News. From Worthy News, President Donald Trump Tuesday unveiled a series of sweeping trade deals with Japan, Indonesia, and the Philippines, touting them as a landmark achievement in his administrative drive to rebalance a global trade before new tariff levels take effect on August 1st. That's coming up next week. Conservative Daily News, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested 243 illegal aliens in the Denver metro area who are currently charged with or have been convicted of criminal offenses after illegally entering the U.S. The operation ran from July 12th to July 20th, resulted in the arrest of one alien wanted for murder, one for human trafficking, 5 wanted for convicted of sex-related offenses, including sex assault and sexual exploitation of a minor, 9 who had been charged with or convicted of drug-related offenses, 13 charged with or convicted of assault, 8 charged with convicted of theft charges, including burglary, robbery, and motor vehicle theft, 17 with charges or convictions related to driving under the influence. ICE arresting 243 illegal aliens. That's in the Denver metro area. From Washington Times, the Trump administration has slashed the IRS workforce by nearly 26,000 people through buyouts and also through firings. That marks a 25% reduction in staffing as President Trump works to reverse the Biden buildup at the tax agency. They sliced through some of the most prominent IRS divisions, taking 27% of the tax examiners, 26% of the revenue agents, information technology shedding 23% of the workforce, and the management and analysis division losing 28% of its staff. We're going to take a quick break right here. We'll be back with many more stories here in our next segment as well. Stay with us. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
For over 200 years, the American judicial system has upheld a standard so strong that a person's very life can be ended based on this level of confidence. A verdict supported by evidence that is beyond a reasonable doubt. Did you know there is evidence demonstrated beyond a reasonable doubt that we have a creator? Most are unaware of it because it has been censored from textbooks. Now, you can have this information at your fingertips. In the beautifully illustrated hardcover book, Have You Considered? Evidence Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, Bruce Malone and Julie Von Vett provide a series of unique devotions presenting evidence for every day of the year that points to the Creator. It's written in an easy-to-read format so that young and old can learn. Have You Considered is available for a donation of $18 or more from VCY. Call 1-800-729-9829.
It's a News Roundup Day here on Crosstalk today. Thanks for tuning in. Several more topics here, even in this segment, that we hope you're able to stay tuned with us. We talk about, the disintegration that's taking place in air traffic control systems and the condition of our roadways across the country, and the call, we need more money for our roads and so forth. Well, the story came out this week under the Biden administration, this from townhall.com, that former Secretary Pete Buttigieg's Department of Transportation spent $80 billion over his 4-year term on DEI initiatives. That was under his supervision. Around 400 DEI-related grants were approved as opposed to only 60 under the previous Trump administration. Just one of those DEI initiatives called Justice 40 allocated half of the $150 billion in infrastructure investment to assist disadvantaged communities. But it gets much more detailed from there. Breitbart.com reporting California's new $20 per hour minimum wage for fast food workers. Well, just as predicted, it's resulted in a significant decline in employment in that sector, leading to 18,000 fewer jobs that would have been the case otherwise. That's according to a new paper released by the National Bureau of Economic Research. Once the law took effect April 1 of 2024, restaurants automated what they could to avoid the higher wages. Some fast food restaurants also closed. By June of 24, Stanford University data indicated over 10,000 fast food jobs were already lost. While the governor's office disputed the figure, saying that fast food jobs increased, it stopped by the fall when it became apparent that the federal data was not on his side. Tragedy in the state of Ohio. An armed man lying in wait on a dead-end street shot and wounded 2 Ohio police officers, reports WISN.com. Wounded the officers when they parked their patrol vehicles in an undeveloped industrial park to eat lunch on Wednesday. Officer driving into the scene in response to their call for help also was shot, seriously injured, but one officer has since died in that. Keep our law enforcement and first responders in your prayers and let them know how much you appreciate them. And certainly tragedy took place here now with the death of this officer. From Alex Newman, a story this week. In a highly anticipated and deeply controversial ruling, the top United Nations court issued an opinion on July 23rd claiming that governments must they've got a legal duty under international law to regulate emissions of carbon dioxide, also known as the gas of life. The decision is being praised by globalists and climate alarmists, but ridiculed by skeptics. According to the 500-page ruling, which is considered advisory but is expected to be influence policy worldwide, all governments have a legal duty to prevent environmental harm by limiting greenhouse gas emissions. Failure to regulate and control the CO2 emissions may amount to an internationally wrongful act, the court said. In other words, reject the UN climate regime at your peril. Though President Trump wants to roll back the very measures demanded by the UN outfit, the implications for governance worldwide are hard to overstate. As the New American reported 6 months ago, experts say this case may be the most significant ever heard by this global body. Coming to us from jpost.com, one of the most provocative speeches heard in the British Parliament in recent years, Member of Parliament Andrew Bridgen claimed that over the past 100 years, approximately 250,000 women and girls have been raped in Britain, with 90% of the perpetrators being Muslim. His remarks triggered an immediate uproar, but also ignited a deeper debate about immigration failures, the silencing of issues in the name of political correctness, and the influence of ideologically driven minority groups on British governance. Officials' reports confirmed that local authorities failed to intervene for fear of being labeled racist. You've got the rapings that are going on. Women and girls are being victimized. And local authorities failed to intervene for fear of being labeled racist. It wasn't ignorance, it was institutional fear, reports J-Post. Professor Alexis J., who led the Rotherham inquiry, wrote, authorities knew but performed political quiet over protecting victims. In this sense, the systemic disregard for these crimes allowed a foreign and dangerous ideology to operate unchecked. FoxNews.com reporting that Minnesota's branch of the Democratic Party endorsed far-left Minnesota State Senator Omar Fatah's campaign for mayor of Minneapolis last Saturday. Fatah has received many comparisons to New York City's Zoran Mamdani. Like Mamdani, Fatah is a Muslim Democrat socialist, 35 years old, member of Generation Y. He's the son of Somali immigrants, became the first Somali American elected to the Minnesota Senate in 2020, and pledges that if he is elected mayor, he would raise the city's minimum wage, increase the supply of affordable housing, combat what he calls police violence. Get ready for defund the police once again. The Epoch Times is reporting the company announced in a July 21st press release that in the second quarter, Google has removed thousands of YouTube channels, ad accounts, and a blogger blog linked to the nations. What nations? Russia and China. This move was part of the work done by Google Threat Analysis Group to counter disinformation campaigns. In the first quarter of 2025, Google removed more than 23,000 YouTube channels and a number of other Google-related assets, a significant portion of which were connected to China and Russia. More than 7,700 of the channels and other assets removed in the second quarter were linked to China, and the campaigns primarily shared content supporting the Chinese Communist Party in both Chinese and English. Of the remaining channels, more than 2,000 were linked to Russia or Russian entities and shared content in multiple languages, supporting Russia and criticized Ukraine, NATO, and other Western countries. Washington Times reporting unidentified hackers recently compromised a major intelligence website used by the CIA and other agencies to submit details of sensitive contacts, according to the National Reconnaissance Office. It's a spy satellite service that runs the site. In addition to the intelligence website hack, Microsoft revealed that this week that Chinese state hackers compromised the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration, a central nuclear weapons agency. The extent of the breach is not fully known, but people familiar with the activity said hackers likely obtained information on key technologies for CIA operations. Other potential areas of compromise could include the Space Force, its efforts to build surveillance satellites and space weapons, and the Golden Dome missile defense program. Okay, this, I believe, from Town Hall. Oh, no, I'm sorry, this from the Washington Stand. Yet another Chinese national being charged with attempting to steal U.S. military technology. The Department of Justice announced Monday. The news comes as national security concerns are mounting over China's dominance of the world's rare earth minerals. A 59-year-old, a U.S.-China dual citizen, a U.S. and China dual citizen, has pled guilty to attempting to steal trade secret technologies developed for use by the U.S. government to detect nuclear missile launches, track ballistic and hypersonic missiles, and to allow U.S. fighter planes to detect and evade heat-seeking missiles. The individual worked for a Los Angeles area researcher and development company where he downloaded over 1,800 sensitive company files from his work laptop onto 3 personal storage devices over a month-long period in 2023. Also from Newsmax.com, is it NVIDIA's advanced artificial intelligence chips? Well, at least $1 billion were smuggled to China in the first 3 months after Washington tightened chip control export controls, the Financial Times reported Thursday. The AI chips designer high-end B200 processors banned for sale in China is widely available in a thriving Chinese black market for U.S. chips. Okay, from Worthy News, Russia launched 42 drone attacks across Ukraine, injuring at least a dozen people, despite both countries agreeing to meet for peace talks in Istanbul, Turkey, starting as of Wednesday of this week. Tuesday's report attacks came a day after Russia unleashed one of its most significant strikes in months, 426 drones and 24 missiles, killing a number of individuals. And let's see, this from Newsmax. Amid the escalating tensions in Russia, President Putin's stalling of peace in Ukraine, the U.S. is reportedly deploying its nuclear weapons arsenal on British soil for the first time in nearly 2 decades. The reports come from the OSINT Defender X account, an open-source intelligence monitor, and the UK Defense Journal. Just the News reporting President Trump's administration has struck a deal with the United Arab Emirates to stop the forced deportation of several Afghan interpreters and soldiers who assisted the U.S. military before they could be handed over to the Taliban this month, and is now beginning the process of vetting them for long-term and safe homes. That's according to Just the News on Monday of this week. Jihad Watch is reporting that the Taliban has imposed a ban on the sale and use of certain children's toys, including dolls and miniature figurines in the southern province of Kandahar, Afghanistan, local sources and shopkeepers said. The ban includes dolls and other children's play items featuring human or animal representations, which Taliban officials have long criticized as inappropriate under their interpretation of Islamic law. Friends, we have a break coming up in just a moment, and I've got a couple more stories to share before then, but I do want to open our phone lines if you want to comment on these or other current event stories. We cannot be all-inclusive. There is so much happening every day, every week, but we cover a number of issues here. Our telephone number is 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. Again, to comment on these or other current event stories, 800-733-9829. This coming from the Daily Caller. The Department of Education announced on Wednesday that it's opening investigations into 5 universities over policies that allegedly cater to illegal immigrants. University of Michigan, Western Michigan University, the University of Louisville, University of Nebraska, Omaha, and the University of Miami are facing investigations after civil rights complaints alleged the schools are illegally discriminating based on national origin to provide scholarships for students in the country illegally. That's according to the department. Daily Caller has a story. The Trump administration probing universities suspected of handing scholarships to illegals. Also from Newsmax, the Justice Department should charge Anthony Fauci with lying to Congress in order to test whether former President Joe Biden's pardon of the former senior national health advisor will hold up in court. That's a statement from Senator Rand Paul. He's chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. He said, I do believe Anthony Fauci committed a felony by lying to Congress, so you have to charge him with a felony, take him to court, and then let that court decide whether or not the pardon is upheld. Very, very important aspect there. Salem News Channel reporting the White House released an artificial intelligence policy plan Wednesday, spelling out priorities for the U.S. to achieve global dominance in the sector. U.S. President Trump's plan calls for open source and open weight AI models to be made freely available by developers for anyone in the country to download and modify. Warning with that. We've talked about that before here on Crosstalk. And from Breitbart, President Trump on Sunday accused Adam Schiff of falsifying loan documents and said Schiff should pay the price of prison for a real crime. He called out Schiff in a Truth Social post Sunday night, saying that Schiff is in big trouble. He falsified loan documents. He once said my son would go to prison on a scam that Schiff, along with other crooked Dems, illegally manufactured in order to stage an actual coup. Very interesting. Well, we'll come back to your phone calls. Our number, 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. You're listening to Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Recently, perhaps you heard the headline, Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, put out a letter stating that he is going to reciprocate with restrictions on visas for Jews coming to America if the harassment of evangelicals by the visa department in Israel doesn't end. What? This seemed very odd. So we asked our reporter on the ground in Israel this week, Aaron, about it. And he said, oh, yes, this has been a problem going on for years. There are many Orthodox inside our interior ministry that are specifically targeting evangelicals and even Messianic Jews that want to come and live permanently in Israel. You see, folks, what this is a group, a small group, that do indeed go very hard after Christians. So we need to pray for them. But also, don't let this news story be used by people for anti-Semitism. Explain it's a specific group of people, not all Jews.
Many in Wisconsin have been waiting with bated breath as to what current Governor Tony Evers was going to do. Will he seek re-election or not? And he announced this week he will not be running for re-election. He has been a very pro-abortion, pro-LGBT governor here in the state of Wisconsin, and he will not be seeking re-election in November of next year. Let's go to the phone lines. Our number 800-733-9829. Ryan is calling from North Dakota. Ryan, you're on the air.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing Hosea 4:6. That's a great verse. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And may we, as a nation, it's a great prayer request for our nation, that we would grasp the subjective knowledge that leads to salvation and sanctification, not just trivia, objective knowledge, because I think that's what Hosea is touching on here, subjective knowledge of the God-man Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Let's go to Samuel in Wisconsin. You're on the air.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. Speaking of the environmentalists, I think we should mention the process of photosynthesis through our trees. As President Theodore Roosevelt said, they are the lungs of the earth, so we should all go out and plant a tree.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, our plants and they need carbon dioxide. Okay, I mean we're dependent. We're committing suicide by doing away with that. Let's go to a caller in southeast Pennsylvania. You're on the air.
Yes, why do they put Christian rock music on the station? I listened to the Christian one for 43 years, and your station only puts the traditional hymns on. And also, why did someone on your station say that Pope Francis said any religion gets to heaven, but when I Googled it, it said he didn't say that. So did he or didn't he? And I'll take my answer over the air.
Okay, I don't have the exact quotes from the Pope here at this point, so this is talking from many, many months ago, so I don't have that. I would encourage you to go to proclaimingthegospel.org on that, but I can't speak why other Christian stations choose the format that they do, but we choose ours for a very specific reason, that of ministry to the heart and soul, and we know that many people certainly have come to faith in Jesus Christ as a result. We've got Andrew calling from Northport, Florida. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. I just have a question about communion in the Catholic Church. I'm reading up a lot about it, of transubstantiation, and I just wonder. I wonder if it's a real thing. If Jesus really becomes the bread and
yeah, I don't. And I'm sorry. Today's program, we're not dealing with different theology. We're dealing with current news events. But again, I would encourage you to go to proclaimingthegospel.org. Mike has got some great papers and reports on that issue. But no, it is a memorial that when we take of the wafer, the cracker, the unleavened bread, when we take of the juice, it is a memorial. It's a picture. Jesus said, "This do in remembrance of me." It is not. We are not physically eating his body or drinking his blood. It is a memorial. It's a picture of what Christ did for us. The number here on Crosstalk, again, I'm not going down the realm of theology today, where it's a current news event program, and here today on the broadcast. And if you have a question, comment, or rather a comment on current event stories that I have shared with you today on the program, our number is 800-733-9829. Here we have from the freebeacon.com, the nation's largest teachers union plans to promote a version of Holocaust remembrance that does not mention Jews, according to its 2025 handbook that references victims of the Holocaust from different faiths and teaches that Israel was founded through forced violent displacement and dispossession. And the most recent guide for members shows the National Educational Association, that represents nearly 3 million public school teachers and education workers, outlined their priorities in their 25 handbook. The union's parliamentary body passed a resolution to boycott the Anti-Defamation League's Holocaust education materials earlier this month. It's a vote that the union leadership rejected. The handbook says the union will promote the celebration of International Holocaust Remembrance Day by recognizing more than 12 million victims of the Holocaust from different faiths, ethnicities, races, political beliefs, genders, and gender identifications, abilities, disabilities, and other targeted characteristics. The description does not mention the attempted extermination of the Jewish people by the Nazis. Also, Daily Signal reporting that Education Secretary Linda McMahon would like Congress to use a number of small bills to dismantle the Department of Education, she told the Daily Signal. Tuesday morning, the McMahon and the House Education Workforce Committee Chair Tim Walberg discussed developing smaller bills that move certain Education Department programs under other government agencies. And but she is working to dismantle that agency. And by the way, those of you in Wyoming that are listening, the first new U.S. rare earth mine in 70 years has broke ground in Wyoming this month. It contains 1.7 million tons of rare earth minerals. It's a groundbreaking discovery that marks a turning point for America. That was announced by the U.S. Department of Energy. Lisa's our next caller. Hi, Lisa. You're on the air.
Hi. I just had a question on just some clarification on the big, beautiful bill. It's been kind of hard to find, actually information about it, so I just wondered if you would be able to clarify it a little bit or give, a quick summary of some of the stuff that's...
I don't have a summary with me. We've gone through that on previous programs. I would suggest going to, the Washington Stand, townhall.com, WND.com would have a summary of the various elements of it that go through it. There's some aspects of concern regarding the legislation, and also that of some wonderful provisions that are provided as well. But one thing it does is it does make the tax cuts permanent that were instituted under the first Trump administration. Is there a particular question on what specifically?
I just heard that there was a lot of cuts being done to, the social help for Medicaid
Sure.
and Medicare and stuff like that.
Right. So like removing those who are here illegally from receiving benefits, or those who are able-bodied adults to be able to, that they would have work requirements or volunteer requirements that would be placed upon them. That is part of it. So you'll just hear, cuts to Medicare, cuts to food stamp program. Well, there have been those on the system who should not be receiving them because of being able-bodied, but just refusing to work or other matters, and others who are here illegally that have been reaping the benefits of those as well. But my closing music is running now on the program, and that means we're completely out of time. Our Friday News Roundup here today on Crosstalk. Again, friends, keep abreast of what's happening in our world today. There is much taking place, and a lot of news, and thanks for making a difference. The Lord's Day is coming. Trust you'll be in a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching local church.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.